Hey guys, Mark from Periphery here. This column entry, I wanted to explain a couple riffs in the song Blast to Ink by Haunted Shores, my side project. Before I go into the first riff, I wanted to explain a little bit about a warm-up technique that I use. I have this routine that involves sliding, hammer-ons, pull-offs that I use normally before I go on stage, but sometimes when I become inspired by a warm-up, it'll somehow subconsciously or maybe intentionally end up in a riff. And this is how the technique goes. So one of the reasons I warm up with this technique is because it gives me a better grasp, first of all, on the actual motion of sliding, but where exactly I'm sliding to. And that's an important thing. In my playing, there's a lot of sliding, obviously, but they're sliding to exact places, and that can be hard to approximate on the fly, which is the reason I tend to speed this up as I become more warmed up. But the idea here is to start with this shape and slide it down to 3. But you don't want to approximate. You want to get it exactly on 1 fret. The frets aren't really important here in this exercise. It's not meant to be in any key. You can do it in any key. You could do it on any set of strings. But the idea is to get the exact intervals and relationship between notes right. So you're being more exact about where you're sliding, where you're hammering back onto, and then when you slide from that hammered on note back to the original position. So that goes like this. So you can see I'm being very exact. 8, 3, and pull off, hammer back onto 3, and then slide from 3 to 8 to resume the shape. So before you get into the second half of the repeated lick, just try this bit. And make sure when you pull down from this 3, pull towards the floor. A lot of players I notice do that a little weakly, but yeah, once you get that down, feel free to speed it up. Make sure it's nice and even. And then once you have that down, try mixing it up and going to this shape. That 12-10 shape, slightly higher on the neck. So. And again, make sure you focus on 2 things, making it very even and sliding to the exact start note of where you need to be. And I do this for a couple minutes. I mix up the position, so it doesn't necessarily have to be, or you can do it really anywhere. Sort of be very specific about where you play it on the neck, but tend to mix up the positions. So you'll notice that after I pick the first note on the 7th fret, everything after the next note is on 1 pick. So I'm using hammer-ons and pull-offs to fret everything else. So I'm only picking once on this 8th fret and back to 7. It's very important to get all of those notes ringing as loud as the next. And again, I find that pulling towards the floor and hammering on hard without bending the string is most effective for getting that. So now let's get to the second verse riff of Blast to Ink. The tuning for this song is our traditional drop C, where the first 5 strings are down a whole step and the 6th string is down an additional whole step. that riff begins with this shape. And more dissonance right there, and you want to make sure, even though it's a somewhat fast played riff, you want to make sure you get that little hint of those two notes ringing against each other. Again, that's 0-3-7 at the beginning. And from there, you go into a lick that utilizes the technique that we went over earlier, and that goes. And in there, you want to remember everything we went over earlier. Make sure you focus on the evenness, the loudness, and ending up on the exact fret that you need to be on, as opposed to just approximating the slides. Make sure that you're on the exact notes that you need to be on. When you slide up to there, you want to land here. And again, that lick goes. Again, get that dissonance, even though there's not a lot of space there. Just a little bit of that dissonance will sound very effective. And then the last part of the riff is kind of a fill to cap it off. When you play that at the original tempo, that's trem picked. That's a black metal, very grim, evil, frostbitten. And again, if you have trouble pulling off techniques like that, go slow. Make sure, again, just like we've been going, I feel like this is a theme of many lessons that we do, is focus on evenness as opposed to speed, because if you ignore the evenness and you just go to your maximum speed, you're not really going to get any of these effects the way that you hear them on the recordings. That's always a huge emphasis of mine, is to focus on the upstrokes in these trem pick bits. Be just as loud, be just as percussive as the downstrokes. If you want any examples of that, go listen to Slayer or something, and you'll get all that. Or any black metal. Not any black metal, because a lot of it's pretty sloppy. And then the second repetition starts very similar, the only difference being this staccato flurry. And again, muting with your right hand and your left hand. And you'll notice the gain I'm using in this tone is pretty saturated, but again, I have the gate setting on there to where the notes are pretty choked off, to get the silence just as powerful as the notes being played. And the end differs slightly. And again, that's just a slide from nowhere. That's a different kind of slide than what I'm talking about. This is kind of just a feel thing, a masturbatory movement. So for the chords in the tail ends of both repetitions, you'll see I'm doing the same shape throughout, and that shape is just a minor chord shape with the root being on the A string, and using these open strings wherever you can. The point here is to keep the open strings ringing, even if it sounds ugly. That's kind of the point of this passage, is to keep it sounding chaotic, keep it sounding unpredictable, and kind of just very negative. Again, very black metal, very death metal in nature.